Aloha aina, ano ai, velina kako. Welcome to Free Hawaii News, brought to you by the Koani Foundation, presenting Hawaiian perspectives on a broad range of topics and issues affecting the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Your hosts for Free Hawaii News are Leon Kaulahau-Siu, musician, composer, diplomat, and political analyst, and Hinaleimoana Wong, Kumu filmmaker, cultural and Hawaiian language preservationist, and community leader. And now, Free Hawaii News.
Ano ai me ke aloha ia kākoa Pauloa e ko Hawaii nei pai aina a puni. Mahalo anui ke kipa ana mai o māko keia ma Free Hawaii News o wau no o Kumuhina.
Aloha, my name is Leon Kaulahau-Siu, and I just want to also welcome you to this episode of Free Hawaii News.
The U.S. Air Force has recently unveiled plans to construct at least 6 telescopes on Haleakalā on the island of Maui. The U.S. Air Force claims the telescopes are needed to provide precise and timely data to address rising threats and increasing dependence on so-called space-based defense systems. Yet, which country is the U.S. Air Force referring to that needs to be defended? The U.S. or Hawaii? And if it's the U.S., then why are they defending the U.S. in Hawaii? To learn more, we now go to Maui, where Haleakalā Kia'i, or protector and activist, Joycelyn Costa is standing by. Aloha, Joycelyn.
Aloha, Hina. Welcome to Maui.
Last month, there were a series of public community meetings on Maui to discuss the proposal to build these telescopes. Can you please share with us how these meetings went?
There was presence of Maui Police Department, which was a little intimidating or questionable as to the motive for them to be there. It almost seemed as though, at first I was going to say intimidated, like the military seemed intimidated, but I think the word I would use more now is uncomfortable, not knowing what to expect, especially with the military's reputation that has been on the news and in the social media lately.
Do you think that the U.S. military would use these telescopes to look into space, or would they possibly be turned into weapons?
I have my ideas, but knowing the military, top secret, right? They won't tell us. And I've seen an article that gave the impression that that's exactly what these things are going to do. It's going to be able to intercept. And, they're talking about lasers through these telescopes, which is very concerning. We can't drive up there with our lights on the car. You have to put your parking light on and drive with just that dim light because of their airspace. You would disturb what they're doing. So for them to now have this capability of lasers, when you shouldn't even be having any light up there, it makes you wonder what for.
Do you think the residents of Maui are safer if the U.S. Air Force builds those telescopes atop Haleakalā?
That would be what they would hope for you to believe, that it becomes safer. I just had a recent meeting with Space Force, and I brought my father, and he asked them, are you building this to protect you or to protect me? Because remember, this 88-year-old man feels they're putting a target on his back. And so where's the protection? When they were building the DKIS, the solar telescope, I asked them what for. And it was to look at solar flares so that they can prepare. And I said, well, if the solar flares are going to do damages, can you stop it? And their answer was no. So really, if it cannot prevent something from happening, how does it benefit us? So same with this telescopes that they're continually building and saying it's outdated, they need more, they need to update, they need to do all of this ingenuity up there. Really, you have to look at if it's there, what the implications are, which is a target. So the benefits, it doesn't outweigh the ramifications, I believe.
Are the people of Maui ready to protect Haleakalā like Mauna Kea was protected?
Yes, they show up. If you had been to these meetings, the 3 evenings, each room was filled to capacity. Like I said, they could not complete the rounds of testimony because they ran out of time. They started at 6, they ended at 9, 3 minutes each, and they still couldn't get it done. So they'll show up, that's for sure.
What do you think is needed to prevent Haleakalā from becoming another major U.S. military outpost?
One word: consistency. And when I say that, the question before, if Maui would show up or the people would show up, the answer was yes. What the military hopes, or what any foreign speculator and settler that comes here hopes, is that you give this hurrah, and if they wait long enough, nobody will show up. So it's a matter of consistency. It's easy for me to say now because I'm retired. So if I need to, I'll be up there every single day, or maybe just camp out. But it's not easy when you're raising a family, when you have a 9 to 5, when you have the night shift, whatever your life restricts you to, in this world of slavery right now, which is what we truly are in. So for me, I think the difference will be, because I saw how uncomfortable the military was in this one particular meeting I was in. If we show up like that, it gives them a chance to pause and really reevaluate how they're going to move through this. The one thing they don't want is to have a really bad look, especially in the media. And if you start to push old folks, little kids, women and children away, and force your way through something like this, it could be, right now, the political climate in all of America is just, chaotic. So it'll only add to the chaos. So for me, I think what will make the difference and stop this is consistency on our part.
How can those on outer islands or elsewhere, those not living on Maui, how can they help?
Have a conversation. Know your history. And pray for us. Because this will have to come not just from the people, but from a different realm. And what the military doesn't realize is they're in that realm. And so there will come a time of push to shove. We're going to need to prepare ourselves on both sides for these consequences. So for those that do not live in Hawaii, have conversations. And if you know people that are of some type of authority or power, talk to them. Talk to them from a human perspective, not from their office authority. And get them to communicate to the point where they understand, and that there won't be a disconnect of humanness. We seem to be lacking that connection, especially when it comes to these types of developments on our island. So it would be mainly communication.
No laila, mahalo anui ia oi, Joycelyn, mahalo anui ke kipa ana mai a mākou, ma ana inei, ma Free Hawaii News, mahalo no ke aloha aina, mahalo no ka mau hana, mai ka ia pauloa. We go next to Sesame Shim on Maui, who also gave recent public testimony opposing more telescopes and advocating instead for protecting Haleakalā from further desecration. Aloha mai, Sesame.
Aloha nui hina. Mahalo nui for having me on Free Hawaii News.
What kind of testimony did the people of Maui deliver at these meetings?
We are people of science, but their science is not that of benefiting humanity. Instead, it maintains a system of American imperialism. Our science is rooted in aina and the sustainability of life. This means ensuring a future for generations to come. It's empirical, not hypothetical. And our people are really rising up against American imperialism and are asserting rights to our national lands, our right to determine how our lands are used. We know where we come from and are being educated in politics, culture, science, and history. Absolutely all testimonies were in opposition to the building of the telescopes, and many testimonies very clearly define specifics in the proposal of the project. Many people, especially from Lahaina, had expressed that this meeting is insensitive to what they're going through in dealing with the fires and especially the lack of housing. Some pointed out the illegal claim to the lands on which they're proposing to build. And many Kanaka are very clear, we're very clear that we are of this land, this is our culture, and this is a very sacred space.
What can we say that matters? Because we did this last time, and there were thousands of people who testified, and you just ignored it. So what is it? Do we have to say that it's deleterious to our health? Obviously, you don't care who owns this land. You're just stealing it. What is it that you are looking for from us that would actually make it so that we could have the first outcome, which is don't build?
I'm 12 years old, and I know the difference between pono and hava. This telescope is hava. We don't need any more of these on our aina. I strongly oppose the idea of this devastation to our aina.
You will not do as you please anymore. Your disregard for aloha, respect, and boundaries is unacceptable. We have tried to teach you our way, but you refuse to learn. Now we, the people, will unite and help you understand that it is time for you to pack up and go home. We, the people of Hawaii, prioritize the well-being of our land, our people, and our future generations. We will stand to protect what is rightfully ours. Haleakalā is not just a mountain. It is a living testament to our culture, our spirituality, and our existence. We will not stand by and watch it be desecrated. So hear our voices, hear them loud and hear them clear. The proposal for telescopes on Haleakalā is rejected. We will stand united with aloha in our hearts to protect and preserve our sacred mountain. This is our home, and we will defend it with every ounce of strength within us. Defend Hawaii. Ew!
We do not want them to continue to develop and build on Haleakalā. And we want them to continue to decommission facilities atop Haleakalā. The U.S. military has a history of destruction and desecration in Hawaii. In fact, the U.S. military is responsible for the most environmental degradation and impacts in the world. I mean, look at Koho'olawe, Makua Valley, Kapukaki, Pohakuloa, and around the world is endless. The military wants to engage in a process that creates an illusion of actual concern for community input and environmental issues. However, they will only engage and concede to concerns that do not ultimately jeopardize their project.
What would be the negative impact to Haleakalā, the aina, and the people if these telescopes are built?
Number one, ignoring the right to Hawaiians to determine what happens on their national lands. Secondly, ignoring the community's voice. And third, environmental degradation through the construction of a 14-story building and all the industrial infrastructure that entails. And fourth, environmentally, we are talking about an area that has been designated as a conservation district due to its delicate environment, including endemic and native species that are found nowhere else in the world. They cannot be replaced. It will also impact our aquifer that feeds our aina, as we have already seen last year with a fuel spill that they still have not cleaned up. Our waters and our resources all impact us.
No laila mahalo anu ia oi Sesame no ko kipa ana mai mako ma nei ma Free Hawaii News. Mahalo anu no ka mauhana. The U.S. military Pohakuloa Training Center, located in the center of Hawaii Island, is a 133,000-acre live fire bombing range for all branches of the U.S. military. Even other countries bomb Pohakuloa as part of RIMPAC war games conducted every 2 years. At last count, over 24 countries participated. Bombing at Pohakuloa has been going on for over 75 years. It has been a training ground for nuclear war since the 1960s. Now, the U.S. military wants to extend its lease of Pohakuloa beyond the current lease that ends in 2029. For more information, we go now to Hawaii Island, where Hawaii Island resident and activist Jim Albertini is standing by. Aloha kawa, Jim.
Aloha, Hina. Thanks for having me on.
At recent public hearings on Hawaii Island, public testimony was overwhelmingly against the continued occupation and desecration of Pohakuloa by the U.S. Army. Let's take a look.
It's not even in our cultural thinking that you can say you're taking care of something and destroy the area at the same time. There's no logical explanation that can be given. And a developer, the military, you all have the same verbiage. We come here to destroy, to construct, to desecrate. But at the same time, we're going to take good care of it as we're doing it.
You don't renew a lease with a lessee who trashes your house or your aina. It's very simple.
No lease renewal, no action alternative, no land swaps, stop the bombing and desecration, make the military clean up its toxic mess, return the land to the Kanaka Maoli, and pay reparations for destruction of the land and psychological injuries caused by your 75 years of bombing Pohakuloa.
What are some of the adverse impacts of U.S. military training at Pohakuloa?
There are probably many that we don't even know about, but I would just summarize a few. First of all, from the testimony at the hearings on the Pohakuloa lease, it has had a profound effect on Kanaka Maoli and the sacredness, the desecration of the aina that's taking place up there. The vast majority of testifiers were Kanaka Maoli people, and the testimony was very powerful. So in addition to that cultural, spiritual desecration that's taking place up there, there's the issue of contamination of air, land, and water from the many toxins that have been used over 75 years, including depleted uranium. And we now know from Oahu's Red Hill the impact that's having over there, and perhaps there's going to be large impacts on this island that we're still not aware of.
Do you think that Pohakuloa could ever be completely cleaned up from all of the armaments, unexploded rounds, and bombs and toxins the U.S. military has unleashed there?
Pohakuloa is a huge base. It's 132,000 acres, nearly 5 times the size of Kaho'olawe. Now, the impact area where the bombs and shells are supposed to land up there is 51,000 acres. But the maps of Pohakuloa say that all of Pohakuloa should be considered a dud hazard area. So it means the entire base is possibly contaminated with unexploded ordnance and other things. So, but the main thing is we have to stop the bombing, evict the military, and then get enormous resources in there for cleaning up the aina to the best possible. It may not be possible to clean it 100%, but we certainly can do better than continuing to bomb and shell that sacred area up there. There's been videos of the commanders up there saying they have no intention of cleaning up the impact area. They want to continue bombing and shelling up there. We saw with Kaho'olawe that $400 million was spent to clean up the island, but it's still a mess over there, including nearshore waters as well. So Pohakuloa, it's in the billions, tens of billions of dollars, I would say, is an estimate, a beginning estimate of starting to clean that up. So first we have to cut the leases. We have to end these executive orders that simply seized a lot of lands beyond the lease, and then somehow get the resources, instead of going to more and more armaments, going to clean up the area. Very difficult process.
Can you explain why there's a growing concern about the U.S. military presence in the Hawaiian Islands?
The military is doing what they call special operations, special ops. This is really assassination training. This is outside of the military bases, on public and private lands, in parks, in nearshore waters, where they're really using tourists and local residents as props in this training. One of these examples of special ops was sent to us, Mauiʻs, that was planned for Mauna Kea Park, now called Gilkahele Park, right opposite Pōhakuloa on the Saddle Road. And here's, in summary, what was planned there. At night, they would have up to 60 troops march out of Pōhakuloa and go up on the slopes of Mauna Kea and set up camouflage surveillance of the park. And during the day in the park, they would have plain clothes, armed enemy combatants mingling with park participants. And the job of those surveillance people up on the Mauna was to try to figure out who is the enemy combatant in the park. And of course, if given the orders, assassinate them. Now, that's a very dangerous situation, but that's just one example of these special ops that are taking place in Hawaii and other areas. And I find it absolutely insane that with the military controlling hundreds of thousands of acres of a base right around there, 132,000 acres of Pōhakuloa, they have to come out of the base and go into our public parks. So anyway, this special operation assassination training is mind-blowing.
What effect has the Kapuka Key or Red Hill water poisoning had on shifting public opinion about the U.S. military?
I think the Red Hill water contamination and the lies about it and the secrecy about it, I think that's been a major step in getting people to rethink their position on the military in Hawaii. I mean, we still don't know the full truth about the Red Hill contamination. The groundwater of the whole southern shores of Oahu is still at risk, in my view. And of course, Red Hill, it is the water source for the Hickam and Pearl Harbor area. And the military has created a toxic mess in Pearl Harbor. Instead of it being the fish breeding area for Hawaii with all the fish ponds that before the military took over, now it's a Superfund toxic site there. So Red Hill is definitely connected to the incredible pollution of Pearl Harbor with nuclear waste dumped right into Pearl Harbor with, you know, all the contaminated high-level tools from the refueling of nuclear ships at Pearl Harbor. Over 2,000 drums of that highly contaminated stuff have been dumped off Oahu's southern shores. So I hope that the damage from Red Hill and the issue of the water broadens out to further things. And of course, we have this issue. Hawaiians testified at the hearings on Pohakuloa. There's a big concern about contamination of the groundwater here on Hawaii Island. The military, the Pohakuloa is right in the center, the pico of the island here at 6,500 feet. And you know, the irony is they haul water up there. They spend $2 million a year hauling water to Pohakuloa, and yet they drilled 2 wells 11 years ago and hit water at a shallow depth, 700 feet below surface, big water dikes, and they're not using that water. And that's an interesting question. Why not? What's in that water? They haven't released any data, independent data of what's in that water. So we possibly have the same kind of water contamination here as Red Hill does. And of course, we know from Kaho'olawe that the bombing and shelling of Kaho'olawe broke the water table. There's no more fresh water on the island of Kaho'olawe because the military broke the water table. So the Red Hill issue is giving fuel to the fire of opposition to the military. I was impressed with the testimonies in Waimea and Hilo, only 2 sites on the entire Big Island for hearings on this lease of Pohakuloa, but the testimony was so powerful and predominantly Kanaka Maoli people speaking about water, the air contamination, the land contamination, and the people's relationship to air, water, and land.
How would you describe how Hawaiians view the U.S. military in Hawaii?
From the testimony that I witnessed at Waimea on this island and Hilo, the testimony was powerful and overwhelmingly opposed. I didn't see, there was one Kanaka who spoke in support of the military, and she was a volunteer for the Secretary of the Army. So she's playing ball. And, that's a dangerous thing, what I see happening here. The military is very concerned, especially about Kanaka Maoli opposition, and I see efforts to co-opt Hawaiians. So there's a cultural advisory committee, for example, at Pohakuloa. And I asked some people, who are these people on this Hawaiian culture? Nobody knew who they are. But the military is kind of trying to use people and even dividing Hawaiian against Hawaiian. I know certain people at Pōhakuloa that had spoken out against it and wanted access to their cultural family sites up there. Now they've been silenced by granting access to them, but not others to cultural sites at Pohakuloa. So we're dealing with some tremendous, it's like a counterinsurgency operations against Hawaiians to really divide that community in opposition to the military. But thankfully, the number of people that came out was very strong. And not only here on this island, but I think on Oahu with this Red Hill thing is another example. But the military is playing ball. And I think this issue of sentinel landscapes, where they're trying to create buffer zones around military bases, is going to be another major effort to co-opt and buy off environmental groups, Hawaiians and others.
Do you think there's a proper role for the U.S. military in Hawaii or not?
I don't. I stand solidly with Kanaka Maoli and that affirm the legal issue that Hawaii was an independent nation that was overthrown by business interests with the direct assistance of the U.S. military. It was regime change. And of course, the U.S. has improved its regime change operations all over the world on the half of business interests. We see it all over. And now we see it more and more happening in the Pacific, Western Pacific, geared up for China. So I think it's time to restore the nation, the independent nation of Hawaii. The U.S. and the U.S. military have to depart, but we have to make them clean up. And I don't see any future for the U.S. military here. It's a desecration, it's a disgrace to the aloha spirit and the people, land, and culture of Hawaii.
What would you say to those who ask how Hawaii would protect itself from China, North Korea, Russia, and other countries who act aggressively if the U.S. military was not present in Hawaii?
The real issue is, Hawaii was a neutral, independent nation. And today with China, the U.S. is trying to gear up bases all in the Western Pacific and Asia, in the Philippines, in Guam, South Pacific, actually, Australia, all these places around the China as kind of a stronghold there. But I think we need to affirm the principles of kapu aloha here in Hawaii, of nonviolence and neutrality, and not act out of fear, because it's the United States that's occupying Hawaii now, that's actually making Hawaii a target in any war with China or North Korea or Russia because of the stronghold of the military. It's the same as Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor wasn't attacked because it was a Hawaiian fish pond. It was attacked because it was a major military base. So I think the best interest for Hawaii is to go back to that neutrality, out of militarism, and actually let's teach the world what Ho'oponopono is all about. We need to be able to solve problems through nonviolent means. And we need things like Ho'oponopono, not more militarism.
What's the single best reason that the U.S. military lease for Pohakuloa should not be renewed?
There's lots of reasons, but you're asking for the single best. And I would say that it violates the sacred view of Kanaka Maoli to land, especially that area of Pohakuloa. I've heard it referred to Pohakuloa as not Long Rock, but the land of the night of long prayer, a very sacred area between Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. And so the desecration to me is is the key area. Even the state of Hawaii, they designate that area as conservation district. That's the highest protected land status possible. So even non-Hawaiians recognize the importance of that area. Now, there's lots of other things that we can deal with in specifics, but, bombing and shelling conservation district or sacred areas is not pono. And that is fundamental to me.
What, in your view, is the proper use of Pohakuloa?
That should be determined by Kanaka Maoli. Let me make a comparison. I think our world with climate disaster is showing the need to restore land systems. Lahaina is a case in point. People have made the point that Lahaina burned because of the water being diverted between all the crops coming in and the invasives and everything. And so it needs to be restored to its more traditional use. And I think Pohakuloa is the same. I mean, that area was an area, very sacred, and it had forests up there. And, it had koa trees, it had the sandalwood trees, and we need to restore the native habitat, not destroy the native habitat, which is taking place. Up at Pohakuloa, just the military and the EIS, they said since 1975, there's been 892 fires started in Pohakuloa because of military activity. 892. It's our Lahaina firestorm in the making. So we need to restore the habitat, the original habitat that's not fire prone up there. And so to me, that's a key issue here. And it has to be done just like in Lahaina now, with Kanaka Maoli coming forward to say what really needs to be done in Lahaina. Once we stop the bombing and get that area cleaned up, then we need to restore that habitat, that mauna, the environment, the ahupuaha systems from the mountains to the seas.
No laila, mahalo anu ia oe Jim, no ko kipa ana mai ma'ane nei ma Free Hawaii News, mahalo anu no kau mauhana mai kai.
Starting yesterday, Hawaii began hosting 2,500 Pacific Islands visitors to the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts called FestPac. This is the first time that Hawaii is hosting this amazing gathering of Pacific Islands artists and musicians, dancers, cultural practitioners, educators, and change makers. So we are very, very pleased to have them here. Now, FestPac started yesterday, but will continue on until June 16th. So there is time for you to take in this rare opportunity to celebrate Pacific arts and the Pacific Way.
The Festival of Pacific Arts has got to be, for me personally, the most important festival that I've ever been to, and that we as Pacific Island people will ever see in our respective island homes. Back in 1988, I was privileged to attend as a delegate and representative of these islands of Hawaii. We were ambassadors. Although we were youth, we were charged with the task of representing for language and culture. Many of our students, like myself at that time, danced and sang and chanted and brought our lives and our livelihoods to the forefront through song and dance. And we had other students that I was in school with who were understudies of artisans, from lei making to weaving to basket making, tapa cloth making. There were so many different skills that were brought forward from Hawaii in 1988, and we convened in that year in Townsville, Australia. And I will never forget that experience. We met so many wonderful people, and for me, it was the beginning of my life's journey in culture. And I got a chance to see just how beautiful our life could be through culture. Growing up in Hawaii, at least people around my age who are now in our 50s, Hawaii wasn't much of a place for too much culture. We did have halau for hula, and we have Hawaiian music, but by and large, we have become Americanized. And so growing up in that kind of Hawaii, can you imagine the feeling to finally go and be around other people who look like you and have dances and singing and sharing and a shared genealogy? And you realize then that you're not as alone as you feel, because sometimes to be Hawaiian in Hawaii, it's almost a lonely place because we're a minor minority in our own home. I was also privileged to go 4 years later to the 6th Festival of Pacific Arts in Rarotonga. And those two experiences helped to set the stage for me for so many things in my life. I don't think I would have gone down the road of teaching in the area of culture, language, and history were it not for the responsibility being placed upon myself and others that I went to school with. When I think about those other folks, all of us are doing things that have to do with culture in today's times.
And as we've been discussing this topic of the Pacific Way, this is like a great example of what we're talking about. So I hope our people can go in and participate in many of these activities that are going on, because as you were saying, here in Hawaii, our culture and all that is basically almost a hobby on our part. I mean, it's sort of like an afterthought or something we're trying to relearn. But there, they actually live their culture in most of those Pacific Islands. Yes, they have Western ways as well, but they actually live in this kind of native community living. So that's really a good lesson for us. And it's really amazing that we can be, in the travels I've made, like you know, just to be in a situation where we look back, and I think of my childhood when I'm in the other Pacific Islands. And I think 50, 60 years back, when we were growing up in Miloli'i and in Na'alehu and in Hilo. And just it was much more of a lifestyle, our culture then. But even then, we had lost so much of it. You know? So I think that when we talk about the Pacific Way, and most of our discussions has been on how we approach issues and situations within our lives today. But it's also, we need to also remember who we are in that respect. And I think that this will become a great reminder of who we were, but and who we can also continue to be, or who we can grow into. So I think that this particular experience or this opportunity is really a great one. So I just encourage everybody to take advantage of this. There are many, many activities going around.
Yes.
They're all on Oahu.
Yes.
But they're all over the islands.
Yes.
So you need to go and look at the schedules and whatever else is out there and participate in whatever you can do. To this day, by legal standards, the United States' claim to the Hawaiian Islands is not only defective, it is utterly fraudulent. But what about the ownership of the lands? Did you know that the United States government never made a lawful claim to the lands of the Hawaiian archipelago? I'll repeat that. The United States Congress or government never made a lawful claim to the islands of the Hawaiian archipelago. In both the Organic Act of 1900 and the Statehood Act of 1950, the United States fails to specify or describe the lands, which lands are included in the boundaries of either the territory of Hawaii or the new state of Hawaii. In fact, they describe no boundaries at all. Each of the district courts of the United States jurisdictions names cities, counties, etc. within its boundaries of authority and jurisdiction. Yet, the Hawaii District Court does not. Here's what the jurisdictional statement says. Quote, Hawaii constitutes one judicial district which includes the Midway Islands, Wake Island, Johnson Island, Sand Island, Kingman Reef, Palmyra Island, Baker Island, Howland Island, Jarvis Island, Canton Island, and Enderbury Island. Again, the U.S. District for Hawaii includes Midway Island, Wake Island, Johnson Island, Sand Island, Kingman Reef, Palmyra Island, Baker Island, Howland Island, and Jarvis Island, Canton Island, and Enderbury Island. Did you notice something in that statement of U.S. jurisdiction? The list of islands in this Hawaii Judicial District does not include the main islands of the Hawaiian archipelago: Hawaii, Maui, Oahu, Kauai, Molokai, Lanai, Niihau, and Kahoʻolawe. The main islands are not in the description of the boundaries of either the Territory of Hawaii or the State of Hawaii or the Judicial District of Hawaii. Then what or which Hawaii do the U.S. laws and Hawaii state laws apply? Is it 1, Hawaii, the largest island on the southern part of the Hawaiian archipelago? 2, Hawaii, ko Hawaii Pai'aina, the Hawaiian Islands, the lawful independent sovereign nation? Or 3, is it the state of Hawaii, the corporation puppet government, the one proclaimed in 1959 by a U.S. presidential executive order? Or is it number 4, the minor islands and reefs of the archipelago named in the U.S. Judicial District of Hawaii? Again, notice that the main islands of the Hawaiian archipelago are not specified anywhere in the text of the Organic Act of 1900, the Statehood Act of 1959, or any enabling law of the United States. Therefore, the description of the United States Court for Hawaii District is an example of admission by omission, revealing that the U.S. District Court for Hawaii possesses no lawful authority over the Hawaiian archipelago, i.e., the Hawaiian Kingdom. Was this just a clerical error in drafting the Statehood Act? That is highly unlikely. But even if it was an error, it still means the Hawaiian Islands are not part of the United States. The only plausible explanation for this irregularity is that the main Hawaiian Islands were deliberately omitted from being designated as being under the United States jurisdiction in order to create plausible denial. That is, if things went south, the U.S. could say, we never claimed jurisdiction. Nowhere in the official documentation of the state of Hawaii does the U.S. identify the main islands of the Hawaiian archipelago as being part of the state of Hawaii or under United States jurisdiction. When added to the actions of Kamehameha III, who privatized the ownership of Hawaiian lands, the result is the United States' exercise of jurisdiction in and control of lands of the Hawaiian Islands is not only utterly fraudulent, it is a blatant act of piracy, an international criminal enterprise. The only way the U.S. sustains this fraud and piracy is through ignorance and raw bully power. But we are making great progress at the United Nations and other international platforms to expose our situation and rally the help of the international community to overcome the United States' illegal and destructive presence in ko Hawaii Pai'aina, the Hawaiian Islands.
Mahalo nui ia'u ko e kia naina ko o ko kipa ana mai I keia hapa o Free Hawaii News. This is the section that I appreciate the most for a very specific reason, and that is because I get to share with you my mana'o. You have heard me speak before about these two terms, kulana and kuleana. Backing up this little classroom lesson, if you would, many of us in the community, we see and we hear the word kuleana. This is often used when we talk about people's duty, people's obligation and responsibilities. However, over these past many years of teaching and being engaged in civic issues, cultural issues, and also considering the role of our language and our language guiding and informing what we do and how we see the world. Kuleana is one such term that I have arrived at a personal understanding of this word that requires me to incorporate another element to it, to complete the thought, to round it out and make sure that there's a context to kuleana. So when Kumuhina says kulana and kuleana, kulana, again, if you missed our other shows that I spoke about this, here's a quick review. Kulana is one's role. It is one's place, one's station, one's rank, one's status. Perhaps it's one's title. It is that place that one holds. If you know your role, if you know the capacity in which you are supposed to serve or to do or to be, then you are informed by that role on the kuleana. What are the specific duties? What are the obligations? And what are the responsibilities that come with that role? And the reason why kulana is critical here is because not every role was meant for you or I. Not every role is something that we are either equipped to stand in. Not every role was meant to be fulfilled by us. And there's many different little nuances of how to understand kulana. But again, when we know our role, then we know our responsibility. And sometimes, while there may be great responsibility out there, and certainly more than enough responsibility to go around, it's not everyone's responsibility to do all of the same things and to hold certain spaces. So, kulana and kuleana. That's my review of this. And it's not so much putting it against each other. We don't look at it as kulana versus kuleana, but instead it is kulana coupled with kuleana. Know your role, know your responsibility. Life gets so much better once we do know this. Now, shifting gears into the mana'o that I wanted to share with you today. Just recently, I watched on our local Hawaii news, there was an American individual. This gentleman, I believe, is someone who is a former military service, and he brought concerns up about the lantern ceremony, the lantern floating ceremony that takes place at the Ala Moana Beach Park. And the concerns were that there wasn't being adequate attention paid to the Memorial Day, and that this lantern floating ceremony actually overshadows Memorial Day. And so from where I sit, that's quite an interesting perspective. Number one, Memorial Day honors Americans whom lost their lives either in service or in battle, and this is honoring the military deceased and their service. So for me, at the end of the day, it's honoring those who have passed on, but this is a specific context for Memorial Day. In Hawaii, because of our culture, we tend to honor all those whom have passed on before, because that's the only right thing to do. That's how we do it. Just because someone was in military service or someone died in a fight, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're only going to pay honor to them when we go to the graveside or when we go to a cemetery and we're going to take flowers. We don't do that. We go and we honor everyone. So it's not uncommon for us to see many island families to honor the understanding of simply taking flowers and other things to honor them and honor everyone. Now, this calls to mind for me as Kanaka, someone who's ethnically Kanaka, knowing that I come from a segment of the population which is now a minor minority, and we are a minor minority in our own homeland. And now I'm seeing the Caucasian Americans, through this voice, speak up about a practice that is actually residing within the Japanese American community. And it's no secret that, and this is not meant to offend anybody who's out there in viewer land, but the power, political power, and oftentimes economic political power is held by the Japanese Americans in our community. Between these two ethnicities, the Caucasians and the Japanese and other Asians as well, but more predominantly in politics, Japanese Americans, you see now this side is now speaking up, because this side, which is actually doing the same thing in the lantern floating ceremony, it is to honor the deceased. And so, you know, the holiday that honors the American deceased, but in the context of in service to the military and in service to the country of the United States of America. Now there's issue being brought with another ceremony that does the same thing, honoring the deceased, but from a perspective of the Japanese community here. Now there would be effort put forward to try to displace the lantern floating ceremony from occurring on the Memorial Day. And I remember hearing the gentleman who appeared on camera saying, well, they can just move it to the Saturday so that we can keep Memorial Day strictly for Memorial Day. And I sat there and I thought, well, isn't this interesting? So this is quite a dynamic, that you have this sector of the community here complaining about this sector, or bringing about issues for this sector. Both are not Kanaka. That's one. The second one is that I want to see which one is going to prevail in the argument to either keep the day assigned as lantern floating ceremony for the organizers who do this. And of course, this is really nothing against either side, but as someone who's Kanaka watching this happen in my home, it only brings to mind the very sobering reality that people pay so much attention that, one, the lantern floating ceremony garners 40,000 people. Two, the American individual who came on camera to express his dismay, he got airtime, and a significant amount of airtime on news media. As someone who has been has appeared in news media often, that space is not held by too many Hawaiians. And when Hawaiians raise their voice of objection or concern about things, we are not often listened to. And that is why I'm talking about it in today's Kumu Hina's Mana'o. As a Kanaka in my own home, knowing what the reality of my community and my people is, what will become of the Kanaka voice if this is the way of things? Really, I couldn't advocate for either, because both days, both ceremonies, they honor those who have passed on before. And of course, Hawaiians are absolutely about honoring those who have gone on before us. But it brings about the question of ethnicity and ethnic politics. And I'm really interested to see what's going to happen. Again, no shade to either our American friends out there or our Japanese American, Caucasian American or Japanese American. But as a Kanaka and someone who does not identify as a Hawaiian American, because that's, for me, that's not possible. I'd like to see what's going to happen. So that's Kumu Hina's mana'o. I toss that out there for you to think about. And so relating this topic today to kulana and kuleana, I challenge all those who are not ethnically Kanaka living in Hawaii to think about their role and their responsibility. So while we would want to honor everyone for a range of beliefs, the real question is, when will the other ethnicities truly honor and uplift the belief system of my people, such that when we bring our concerns to the forefront and when we raise our voices of opposition to something, when will it be truly honored and respected for what it should be? No laila, mahalo anui ya oko, no keia manawa. That was our session for Kumu Hina's mana'o. And don't forget, kulana and kuleana, know your role, know your responsibility. Mahalo.
We want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Free Hawaii News. It's been our pleasure to be here, and we want to thank all of our guests for being here and for sharing their thoughts and their hearts about what's going on in Hawaii.
Ai no leila e kia naina e kipa mai nei haawi hono I ka leo mahalo. Mahalo anui no ka oko kipa ana mai, ka ho manawa nui ana mai, ahiki I keia, ka lava ana o keia papahana. Eia no maua ke haawi nei I ko maua mahalo me ko maua aloha. Ahui ho, aloha.
We hope you enjoyed this month's episode of Free Hawaii News. Mahalo for watching. There's a new show every month, so this program will air several more times this month. You can view it anytime on Olelo's on-demand site or on YouTube. See you next time. Ahui ho, aloha aina.
Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.